New research shows the potential impacts of using cannabis while pregnant. Our 9 Health expert, Dr. Payal Kohli, joins us now. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Corey, for having me.
This is fascinating. So children whose mothers use cannabis during pregnancy may be more likely to develop mental health problems.
Yes.
Later in life, because you think about it during pregnancy, but this is something down the road.
Yeah, because if you think about it, whatever you're doing during pregnancy affects how the baby's organs develop, particularly their brain. And so it could translate into not just behavioral or mental problems, but physical problems as well.
Wow. So do we know how many women use marijuana during pregnancy?
You know, I was surprised to see these numbers. It's about 5% of women, and the numbers are actually growing over time. Yeah, and you know, if you think about it, some women are using it and not realizing that they're pregnant. So they end up using it before they know they're pregnant. But a lot of women actually reach for it for morning sickness because marijuana has a really strong antiemetic effect. It helps with nausea. It helps with that feeling, that queasy feeling that you can have in the first trimester. And a lot of people think it's safe and okay to use.
Does it make a difference if it's an edible or if they're smoking it, or does that not
You know,
play?
so they didn't actually look at that in the study, but they're planning to do that in the next round of the study because they think it may actually matter how you consume it. It may matter how much you consume of it and how often. In other words, how much break are you getting in between using the marijuana.
What is the takeaway for pregnant women or women who are trying to get pregnant?
Yeah, so this study showed what's called an association, not a causation, meaning women who ended up using marijuana even after they knew they were pregnant were more likely to have kids with smaller brains. They were more likely to have kids with ADHD, with behavioral problems, with rule-breaking behavior. But it doesn't necessarily mean the marijuana is causing it.
Right.
In other words, they could be doing something else in their lives that may have actually led to that. So I think the next round of studies will really help us to know whether there's a causal relationship. But personally, I'm telling my female patients who are of childbearing age that when you find out you're pregnant, you probably want to abstain from using it because this kind of data is really building up.
Yeah, there's so much unknown, and there are other things that can help women with nausea if it really is a problem.
Absolutely, and what was interesting is it depended on when you used it. So if you happened to use marijuana, didn't know you were pregnant, but stopped the minute that you found out you were pregnant, it didn't translate into that same sort of effect on your kid. Because probably at that point, early in the pregnancy, the receptors in their brain that bind to the marijuana, the cannabinoid receptors, hadn't developed. But if you keep using it during pregnancy, that's when you really start to see some of these effects emerge.
This study is really interesting, but like you said, there's still a lot of questions.
There are a lot of questions, and I think the idea here is if you're a woman, a pregnant woman who's thinking about using marijuana, talk to your obstetrician before you make that decision because this data is really, really compelling.
Yeah, good call. Dr. Kohli, thanks for coming in.